We're 3 races down in 2025 and we're just starting to get a bit of a picture as to what the pecking order looks like in the early part of the season. What's clear so far is that McLaren have the fastest car, and it looks as though Red Bull, Mercedes and Ferrari are not too far behind. They're sort of fighting for the best of the rest tag. Sure enough, McLaren managed to bag pole position in each of the first 2 races in Melbourne and then in China, and it also went on to take victory in both of those races as well. So it looked as though coming to Japan in round 3 that it was going to be business as usual. McLaren were favourites to win, but to all of our surprise, it didn't quite pan out that way. Instead, Red Bull and Max Verstappen had other ideas. They put together a masterclass of a weekend where no performance was left on the table, and it proved to be one of Max's probably best weekends in Formula 1. First of all, snatching the pole away from both Norris and Piastri on the Saturday, and then he went on to hold both of them off in a slower car in what was his first win of the season. Now, the first 2 races of the season hadn't really gone to plan for Red Bull because 1, they had a slow car, and 2, they had another matter to deal with, and that was in respect of their second driver, because they obviously made the decision to get rid of Liam Lawson, demote him back to the junior team Racing Bulls, and promote Yuki Tsunoda in his place to try and resolve the curse of the second seat, and then also figure out a way that they could make the car faster. It seemed from the times in practice that they actually wouldn't be in contention. Max and Yuki were quite a way adrift of McLaren's pace, so that only made their qualifying heroics even more surprising. So it not only surprised itself, but in a way it kind of caught McLaren completely off guard. And even though Max had beaten 2025's clear pace setters, that result really shouldn't have stood. It should never have happened in the first place. That's because Norris made a mistake on his first run, which meant he had it all to do on his second lap in Q3, giving himself too much to do in a way. And then Piastri himself made a mistake in the first sector, which then, although he was able to recover the time that he lost in Sector 2 and Sector 3, which he was both purple, it wasn't quite enough to dethrone Max from his fastest lap that he'd set just a few seconds earlier. In fact, the gap between the 3 was so close it was less than half a tenth. So what should have been a front row lockout had turned into a P2 and P3 start for the Papaya team. And you and me both know that when Max starts from the front, he's almost unbeatable, even when he's left to fight alone against 2 teammates in a faster and more dominant car. But even though the positions had stayed the same as they had lined up on the grid for the first sort of third of the race, you did sort of presume that McLaren, given how they clearly had the edge on pace over Max, would be able to outfox Red Bull on strategy to get at least one of their drivers ahead of Verstappen. I mean, they did try the undercut with Piastri, but obviously that didn't work, and I think they did plan to do a similar sort of thing with Norris, but they couldn't do that because Max pitted on the same lap as Lando. That being said, McLaren's pit crew did an amazing job to get Lando out virtually alongside Max, because they did a pit stop that was 1 second faster than Red Bull's. But as the most exciting part of the race unfolded, we weren't able to watch this because FOM decided to focus solely on Charles Leclerc's pit stop. Looking back at the replays and the footage, Lando clearly released his pit limiter actually slightly before Max, which meant he had more momentum and was able to get on the throttle sooner, which is why he almost jumped ahead of Max as they exited the pit lane. But with these wide cars, it was always going to be difficult for them to run side by side going towards turn 1. So that really is why Lando had no choice but to take to the grass. But there's no question that Max did not force him off or anything like that. Lando simply tried to take an opportunity. He saw it as his golden chance to jump Verstappen. It didn't quite work out, and there's absolutely no doubt that Verstappen was blameless in this incident. So the chance was gone, but almost immediately both Lando and Oscar started to reel in Max once again, and it seemed only a matter of time before both of them would be in Verstappen's DRS range. But Max did an absolutely outstanding job of being able to manage the gap so well that neither of them were able to get within that 1 second window that they needed to activate the DRS. Both were clearly quicker than Max on raw pace, but they just couldn't get close enough to Max when it really and truly mattered. So surely there had to be another alternative. There had to be a plan B. Surely that was to swap the drivers. In fact, Piastri actually suggested this to McLaren over Team Really because he felt that he had the pace. If he was given clear air and given the chance to go after Max, he would be able to both catch him and then pass him and win the race. But that call never came. He just sat there watching his teammates sit over a second behind Max and not be able to be in a position to attack him. Looking back, this is where McLaren all but handed victory to both Red Bull and Max. It should have been a final roll of the dice, but they chose not to intervene. Just like last year, McLaren is shying away from feeling as though it has to favour one driver over the other, because it doesn't want to be in a position where it feels like it has to pick up the pieces because one of the drivers feels upset that it's been mistreated. It's deja vu with last year. Look at how they handled both the Hungarian Grand Prix and the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, when it was clear to all of us that McLaren needed to start back in Lando because his chances of the championship were far greater than what Oscar's was. That really should have been a warning to them that they need to make their orders clear, be decisive, and don't mismanage your drivers. But that's exactly what they did, and how it went for them at Suzuka. It clearly cost them a 1-2 finish. Okay, having two top drivers is a great problem for any team to have, but you have to be prepared to be ruthless at the risk of upsetting one of those drivers to get the best result for the team. We keep saying it, but that's where Red Bull's advantage lies compared to McLaren. They don't have to worry about that situation occurring because they have a clear number one in Max, and he doesn't have to defer to team orders to his teammates, who clearly Red Bull are going to throw all of their weight behind in a championship fight. If you look at the first three races, there's a clear trend appearing, and that's that every race so far has been won from pole position, and that means that qualifying is therefore more important than ever. What is worrying for the whole of the field, not just McLaren, is that even when Max doesn't have the best car, he's still going to be a factor in this title fight. You know, beating him when he has the best car is one thing, but beating him when he doesn't is quite another. So if McLaren wants to win the Drivers' Championship for the first time since 2008, then it absolutely has to maximise the fact that it has the best car at this moment in time and not throw any points away. It can't afford to, because if they do, it could end up being costly. The fact that they continue to give equal treatment to both of their drivers could end up being actually the real nail in the coffin if they don't win this year's championship. And they don't. That's the last thing they want to do, is look back and think we should have really backed one of them or been more strict with team orders when it really mattered, when a win was on the line, for example. Mismanaging drivers has cost teams championships in the past, and has also led to the downfall of the relationship between the two drivers, and that obviously also causes tension inside the team. McLaren themselves have been in two very similar incidents in the past. You look at how they failed to deal with the Senna-Prost feud when that really got heated in 1989, and then again in 2007 when Alonso and Hamilton went toe-to-toe, and the fact that McLaren didn't deal with their falling out properly cost them the World Championship that year, because Kimi Raikkonen snuck past them and snatched the world title from under their grasp. It also happened to Williams in 1986 when Mansell and Piquet were fighting for the title, but they allowed Alain Prost to snatch it away from them at the final round in Adelaide. There's 21 races and 5 sprints left in the season, so a lot can happen between now and Abu Dhabi. McLaren just needs to grow a pair. It needs to not shy away from every now and again backing one of their drivers over the other. They should not back out from making a brave call that prioritises one of the drivers, because the last thing they want to do is look back at the end of the year with regrets as to how they may have lost this World Championship. So there you have it. That's what I made of McLaren's Japanese Grand Prix. Do you agree with my take, or do you have any opinions of your own? Be sure to leave a comment down below. And also don't forget to like the video, and if you are new around here, also don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.